and she doubled down on everything that she had done as though she was proud of it. We contacted the principal, who confirmed that this was a confidential meeting, that as a public school, they were obligated to provide a safe space for my child. So essentially a safe space from her family. We sat down with the superintendent and assistant superintendent, who showed us fake empathy, who made false promises. We now understand that was complete gaslighting. And then we called the police, because if this had happened on a playground or in any setting other than a public school classroom, that would have been my first call. In our opinion, this was nothing short of sexual abuse of our little girl, who that night came home and ordered mac and cheese from the kids menu and went to sleep with her teddy bear. And her dad and I cried over her all night because they had taken her innocence away and we couldn't give it back. So the police told us that because there was no physical touch or exposure of body parts that we know of, there are no legal ramifications. But they told us to get loud. They said just because this isn't illegal doesn't mean it isn't wrong, and that other parents don't deserve to know about it. And so as you heard, we did get loud. We got very loud. I did Tucker and Glenn Beck and Hannity, and I was willing to share my story with anyone who was willing to listen. And after we went public, this is about a year after our daughter's art club incident, 4 other families just in that art club alone came forward with the exact same story. All 11 to 13-year-old girls, all of them had been confused into transgenderism, and all of them were suicidal around the same timeline. In fact, one of the little girls drank bleach and tried to take her own life. But the difference with these families was that their little girls followed the rules. They never came home and told their families about art club or GSA club. And so these families bore the weight of that guilt, wondering how this confusion had come upon their little girls. Through all of this, my district has completely doubled down on their behavior. In fact, most of it they're doing right out in the open. They've doubled down on the transgender agenda, they've hired more DEI staff, they've even publicly called us haters and destroyers for sharing our story. So when I felt hopeless and all other avenues had been exhausted, I learned the power of public record request. As you know, there's the FOIA law, which allows you to see what your federal government agencies are doing. And every state has a reciprocal law that enables you to see their finances, their calendars, their budget, their communications. Our government is beholden to us, the taxpaying citizens, and we have got to exercise that right. We've got to see what they're doing and hold them accountable. If we don't use this right, we will lose it. In fact, my school district has even proposed state law to restrict public's access to records, since myself and others have started to expose what we found. I want to share some things that I've discovered in my school district through the CORA process, the Colorado Open Record Act. Is all of this happening here in Wyoming? No. But did your school district hire Margaret Crespo as its superintendent, the Boulder resident and Chiefs for Change counterpart of my superintendent in Fort Collins, who was driving all of this agenda? You did. And so what that tells me is that the same major influences pushing all of these agendas in Fort Collins have their eye on Cheyenne. The reality is that what happens in California comes to Colorado. Sometimes we even beat them to the punch. And what's happening in Colorado will surely creep over the state line into Wyoming. So here's some things that I found. 2 days after the incident with our daughter, the art teacher and presenter had colluded with the school board to keep us quiet. They referred to parents who find out about these clubs as barriers that have been removed at other schools. They discussed their right to lie to parents under the Equal Access Act, which is totally irrelevant. And they discussed calling CPS to my home for a well child check because I disagreed with what they did with my daughter, and they did send a mandatory reporter to my home. And I firmly believe in the state of Colorado, if we had let CPS in, and my daughter had said that my parents are not affirming my transgender identity, they would have taken my children away. They said everything I say to them should be thought of as evidence. They've instructed all of the Poudre School District staff to ask students' pronouns at the beginning of every class. In fact, they held mandatory training on it. They've instructed all health staff that they cannot tell parents if a child is suicidal or cutting. So they are not just causing life-threatening situations, they are then robbing parents of our right to care for our children at their most vulnerable moment, most likely caused by the public school. They put out official talking points that you cannot opt your children out of clubs. in the Poudre School District. So if you find out about GSA, and they usually meet at lunch hour so that parents can't find out, if you do learn about it, you cannot opt your children out. I found evidence of them transitioning elementary students behind parents' back, even after parents have found out and objected to it. I've actually exposed these emails in Fox News and Epic Times. I encourage you to read them. It's really scary to see the communication between these people scheming to lie to parents. I found a 15-page transgender toolkit, which included such definitions as top surgery, which is the removal of a child's healthy breast, and sexual activity. I've also found gender support plans, which they have now changed the language and renamed an individual support plan. If you don't know what these are, they're happening in absolutely every state in the country. I've talked to parents across the country who have run into this situation. These are transition plans to change your child's gender. And the second question on these plans is, are the parents supportive? If no, how do we accommodate? So right off the bat, their intent is to hide the gender transition from parents. They keep lists of students' real names and pronouns and preferred name and pronouns that are shared with the entire school staff, but not with parents. I found evidence of a 5th grade teacher not wanting to teach the gender ideology portion of the 5th grade sex ed curriculum, and in doing that, she was told to re-educate herself. When she was unwilling to re-educate, she was fired from her position. They tout the statistic, get this, that 47% of children in Laramie County are LGBTQ, and that 30% are LGB. They're opening school-based health clinics, which are actual private doctor offices within our most underserved schools, where children can get vaccines, abortion referrals. Most of them are run by Planned Parenthood. They have health clinics. They can prescribe psychotropic drugs right there in the school. And again, children are the steward of their own health care at 12 in Colorado, so they don't need parent knowledge or consent. They've moved to make all of our GSAs, or Gender and Sexuality Awareness Clubs, school-sponsored. And this is an important distinction I didn't understand before. There are student-sponsored clubs, like the FCA, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which must be started and run by a student. And there are school-sponsored clubs, which are initiated, led, and run by adults. That is what they've moved to make all of our GSAs in the Poudre School District. And they're bringing in incredibly concerning outside parties, like this Skittles activist that abused my daughter, but I've also found evidence of occult members. In fact, someone else was invited into her art club that day, and I'm going to sound crazy saying this, let me get my tinfoil hat. They invited in a non-binary, transgender, shape-shifting witch who does public rituals in her own blood and writes blogs about Aleister Crowley king sex that are available for students to read. Whew, so that's heavy dinner conversation, I know. No one knows better than me that this is an incredibly heavy topic, and it's a lot of heavy knowledge to know what's actually happening in our public schools right across the board. Do I believe all this is happening here? Again, no. But I know some of it is, because I've talked to concerned parents here in the state of Wyoming. You may have heard of the family in Rock Springs who has a federal lawsuit against the school district for doing a gender transition plan on their 13-year-old daughter without their knowledge. The reality is that the public education system in this country is broken. And I am not anti-education or anti-teacher. I used to be an elementary school teacher. But you must understand the stronghold that the unions have. You must understand the long road that we've been on to get here. This agenda has been at play for decades, since the days of Karl Marx and John Dewey and Paulo Freire. It's been hijacked. They had long game, and we've all been asleep at the wheel for decades. I do believe Fort Collins is the forefront of a national agenda. In our last school board election in 2021, we saw 5 times more money raised for each candidate than ever before. When we looked at their donation log, they received money from the NEA, the AFT, the Polis family, our gay governor, the Stryker family, the Rockefellers, the Gates Foundation. These people were pouring into our local Fort Collins school board election. But they've messed with the wrong family this time. To fighting back. Number 1, hit them in the wallet. If this is happening in your local school district, pull your kids out. Hit them where it counts. Number 2, lawfare. I filed a federal lawsuit with America First Policy Institute as my co-counsel, Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida, as my lead lawyer. And we aim to create case law and set precedent so that other parents can follow suit. This is uncharted territory, but someone has to lead the way on the legal front so that other parents can follow. Number 3, ensure your school boards are filled with common sense and family-focused people. If you've got great school board members, support them. If you've got woke school board members, support people who are willing to go up against them. Again, school boards have a lot of authority over our children. And finally, expose. Expose, expose, expose. I recommend parents defending education. In fact, their director of marketing lives here in Cheyenne, Mylin Salavarria, and she is very, very welcome to take any incidents that have happened in local schools and expose them on a national basis. What I've learned from my school district is of this four-pronged approach, what they hate the most is bad press. And so I use that to my advantage. So as a community, what should you be looking out for? Number 1, pronoun conversation. It seems innocent, but it takes 12 times for a child to hear something before it becomes fact to them. So if your child is innocently asked what their pronoun is at the beginning of every class for an entire week, that has now become commonplace, and they will start to question their own gender identity. Social emotional learning, human growth and development curriculum, or sex ed, surveys. I recommend opting your children out of all of these things. Peace circles and feeling circles. I had a 6-year-old in the public school at the time that my daughter's incident happened. And he came home one day and said, "Mom, the counselor came in today and we had another peace circle. And the rule of that is what happens in the circle stays in the circle." So they are already desensitizing children as young as 5 and 6 through social emotional learning and these feeling circles to keep secrets from their parents. I caution you to watch out for school counselors and mental health professionals. Yes, there are some very good people in the system, but the reality is the ASCA has been hijacked with wokeness. Usually the school counselor's office is the hub where all of these gender transitions start. Watch out for literacy, math problems, reading assignments. I learned after the fact that my daughter was assigned a book called George in her 6th grade English class when she was 11 years old. I didn't open the book. It looked harmless enough. She was 11. It was assigned by her teacher. I later learned that this book was entirely about transgenderism. It's a little boy who wants to be a girl. He talks about pornography, cutting his private parts off, kissing boys, wearing girls' underwear. And I had no idea these seeds had already been planted in my daughter's head prior to the art club. Watch out for anti-bullying, suicide prevention, inclusivity. All of these things sound really great. Yes, our kids are in a mental health crisis. Yes, these things are necessary. But I caution you to look into the details of these programs because they have also been hijacked. Outside party involvement, as I mentioned, and as always, follow the money. So fast forward to today. I'm only public because I now have a healthy, thriving 14-year-old girl who has completely desisted the transgender identity. She wants us to use this story for good. In fact, we watched What is a Woman, the Matt Walsh documentary on Daily Wire. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. We watched this with our daughter. And she said, "Mom, why didn't I understand this was happening to me when it was happening?" And I said, "That was by design. You were vulnerable and these adults took advantage of you." And she said, "How do I make sure this doesn't happen to another innocent girl?" And I said, "You're doing it right now. You let me tell your story so that other parents can be informed and make decisions for their children that I didn't have the opportunity to do for you." She actually just ran for student council and was elected and went to homecoming in a beautiful purple dress with the most lovely young man who is a conservative. He's a district lead at 15 years old in Laramie County and very interested in supporting conservative students. She came to Denver with me to oppose dangerous legislation, and she wrote testimony for Senate Bill 144 here in Wyoming that would have banned gender mutilation, which unfortunately did not pass. So here's some things I've learned that I share with parents everywhere. I've had a lot of parents come up to me and say, "I have a 5-year-old, I have an 8-year-old. How do I protect them from this? I don't want to talk about it." That's the whole point. I don't want my kids exposed to this. So I boil it down